Okon returned home from work to find his wife Ene eating their mattress. She was hunched over the brand new mattress that he bought the day before and was happily munching away at the foam with her cheeks stuffed like a chipmunk. Ene, not again, Okon said, throwing his hands in the air in frustration. This is the last mattress in the house. You've eaten everything. I am tired of sleeping on the floor at night. Ene looked up at him. Foam crumbs littered all over her body and said with an innocent smile, "But Okon is so soft and delicious, I can't resist." Okon heaved a sigh of frustration as he slumped into his chair, whose foam had also been eaten by his wife. A chair that once served as his favorite chair was now reduced to just a wooden frame and fabric. Ene, you've eaten every mattress, cushion, and chair in this house. How am I supposed to live like this? Do you know how embarrassing it is to not be able to invite my friends to my home any longer? Ene looked at him, still holding a chunk of foam in her hand. Okon, it's just the foam. I don't see the big deal, she said as she continued to munch on the foam, not caring how her husband felt about it. By the time night came, Ene had eaten almost half of the mattress, not caring where her husband would sleep. Okon, filled with intense anger, picked up his phone and called her mother to complain about her daughter's strange addiction. Her mother let out a very loud laughter, reminding Okon of what he said when he came to ask for her hand in marriage. This was a few months ago, and Ene's mother ensured that she told Okon about her daughter's strange addiction. Okon, after hearing this, laughed it off and said that he did not care if Ene ate all the foam in the world, that his love for her was deeper than any addiction. Ene's mother reminded him of his promise, and Okon revealed that he had no idea that it was this serious. Her mother then encouraged him to figure out a way to make her to stop, and Okon decided to make it his duty to rid his wife of her strange addiction. He sat on the bare wooden frame that had once been his favorite chair, deep in thoughts. His eyes drifted to his wife, Ene, who had fallen into a very deep sleep, curled up on the small section of the bed that she hadn't consumed yet. The room, once full of comfort, now felt as hollow as the mattress that she had devoured. Okon, in that moment, knew that he was in soup. His wife had eaten 2 mattresses already, and Okon knew that he could not continue to live like this. He stayed up all night, his mind racing for a solution. By morning, he finally settled on what seemed like a brilliant idea. Okon went to the shops and ordered for 5 mattresses. He believed that overwhelming his wife with abundance would make her get tired and give up on her addiction, but what he did not know was that Ene had eaten over 10 mattresses in her lifetime. She was so excited to see the mattresses and thanked her husband for being so understanding and kind. Okon was so furious. He clenched his fist in frustration but forced a smile from his lips. "You're welcome," he said angrily as Ene happily ran her hands over the new mattresses, smiling and jumping in excitement. Okon realized in that moment that his plan had backfired. Days passed, and Ene devoured the mattresses one after the other as though they were her favorite delicacies. Okon watched in disgust as his once neat and tidy home transformed into a litter of foam. He couldn't believe that his idea had only fueled her addiction and decided to do something before it gets out of hand. Okon, seeing how Ene was engulfed in her meal, pretended to be in extreme pain. He pleaded for her to rush to the pharmacy to get him some medications, and Ene, terrified to see him in pain, quickly rushed off to the pharmacy, not forgetting to take with her a chunk of foam, which she squeezed into her bag. Okon watched as she rushed out of the house and immediately arranged for the mattresses to be discarded. He ensured that no single mattress was left in the house, and when Ene returned from the pharmacy, she was heartbroken to realize that everything had gone. All she was left with was the small chunk of foam that she put in her bag. When she was rushing out of the house, her heart was so heavy to know that her husband could be so cruel and inconsiderate. Okon, she cried, dropping the bag of medication on the floor. Where are the mattresses? What happened to them? Her voice wavered, filled with a mixture of confusion and sorrow. Okon stood firm, arms crossed, as he spoke to her, saying, Ene, I had to do this. You've eaten everything in this house. I've tried to be patient. I've tried to understand, but I can't take it anymore. This madness has to stop. Ene's eyes were now filled with tears. The foam she had grown so attached to was gone, and she did not know what to do. She sat on the ground, her heart heavy with sadness, as tears began to pour down her eyes. Okon was so heartbroken to see his wife in such a state. Should I bring the mattresses back? He thought to himself as he remembered the harm that this could cause to them. Okon then decided to stand his ground, knowing that he was doing the right thing. He rushed into the kitchen and prepared a delicious delicacy for his wife, who was no longer at the spot that he left her. Okon walked around the house, calling on his wife, but got no response from her. Terrified that she might have run away, Okon quickly ran out of the house and was shocked to see his wife in his car. She had locked herself inside his car as she munched on the foam in his car seat. Okon stood frozen, his heart sinking as he watched Annette tear into the foam of the car seat like it was her last meal. She had locked herself inside, determined to satisfy her craving, even if it meant destroying the last bit of comfort left in their lives. Ene, no! Okon shouted, banging on the car window. You have to stop this, it's getting out of hand. But Ene, lost in her compulsion, didn't seem to listen to him. She continued munching, her cheeks stuffed with foam. Okon felt a deep sense of helplessness wash over him. He knew he had to act fast before she consumed the entire car interior, leaving them without any means of transportation. Realizing that words were not enough, Okon ran back into the house, searching for the spare key to the car. His mind raced as he thought of what to do next. I can't let her keep doing this, he muttered to himself. I need help, real help. He finally found the key and rushed back outside, unlocking the car door. Ene looked up, startled, foam crumbs all over her face. Get out of the car, Ene, Okon said firmly, though his voice was filled with sadness. I can't let you destroy everything we own. This has to stop, Okon said as Ene got down from the car and walked into the house, her bag stuffed with some foam that would last her for a few hours. Okon stared at his car seat, which was now a total mess. The once beautiful interior now looked like something out of a disaster scene, and Okon in that moment realized that his wife's strange addiction had destroyed yet another part of their life. He felt so frustrated and downcast as he tried everything possible to control his anger. He walked into their home and met Ene, who stood in the corner as she nibbled on the foam that she had stashed in her bag. Okon sat on the chair, burning in anger as he thought of what to do next. Maybe she is bored and needs to work to keep her mind busy, he thought to himself as he made up his mind to get her a job. If she is so busy, she won't have the luxury of time to think about her addiction, talk more of acting on it, he thought to himself, convinced that his plan would work. The next morning, Okon made a few phone calls and was able to secure a job for his wife at his friend's office. He was so delighted, knowing that his plan would work, so he approached his wife and informed her of her new job, and Ene did not seem pleased to hear about it. However, as Ene pondered on everything, she realized that the plan was not a bad one after all. Ene knew that with this job, she would be able to earn some money for herself to enable her buy as many mattresses that she would ever need. She smiled and informed her husband that she would be taking the job, and Okon was so delighted, knowing that his plan would work. Little did he know that his wife also had a plan of her own. Whilst Okon saw the job as a solution to his wife's addiction, Ene saw this as an avenue to make money, enough to buy anything that she ever wanted. The next morning, Ene got up early to prepare for work. She grabbed the little foam she had left and put it inside her bag, ensuring not to leave for work without it. She got dressed and her husband offered to take her to work. Ene smiled happily at him, and Okon was so glad to see how happy she looked on her first day of work. A few minutes later, Ene arrived at the office and was handed over so many files to photocopy. Her eyes widened in shock as she never expected such volume of work on her first day. She spent hours by the photocopier as she photocopied all the documents that she was given, her legs shaking as her waist hurt from standing for so many hours. After hours had passed, Ene was finally done and couldn't wait to return to her desk to munch on her phone. She arrived at her supervisor's office to drop off the documents and was told that she also had to stamp the documents. Her supervisor gestured for her to sit down on the desk next to her table and handed her a stamp. Ene could not believe her eyes. She sat there stamping the documents one after the other. The more she stamped, the more she craved her foam, which she believed would immediately fill her with strength. Ene began to think of what to do. She had to get to her bag immediately and decided to seek the permission of her supervisor to use the office restroom. She walked out of the supervisor's office straight to her desk as she plunged her hand into her bag to grab her foam. To her surprise, there was no foam in her bag. Ene's eyes shone in shock as she wondered where the foam could be. Her heart raced, wondering how she would survive for the next 5 hours, seeing the intense work that she was currently saddled with. Ene could not control her urge. She walked towards the restroom and came across an office, which seemed to be abandoned. In there was a sofa that was covered in dust. Ene immediately got an idea and snuck into the room, ensuring that no one saw her. She walked towards the sofa, grabbing a scissors that she saw lying on the table next to the door. Ene created a huge tear by the side of the sofa and drew out some foam, which she immediately threw into her mouth and began to munch like one who had not eaten in decades. Her entire body felt as though a weight had been lifted off her shoulders as she continued to munch on the foam. Just as she turned to leave, Ene stumbled on a man who she never knew was standing right behind her. His mouth opened in shock to witness her strange addiction. Ene began to panic as she pleaded with the young man who, without saying a word, walked out of the office, leaving her there terrified of what they would do to her for all that she had done. Unsure of her fate, Ene returned to her desk and continued to stamp the document. It took her several hours to be done, and before she knew what was happening, it was the close of work. Ene rushed out of the office and headed straight home. She could not believe how tired she was and couldn't wait to get to the comfort of her home. However, when she opened her door, Ene could not believe what she had turned her home into. She could see all the damage that her addiction had caused, and this broke her heart greatly. A house that was once comfortable now looked deserted with shredded sofas because of her addiction, and this made her extremely sad. Her husband Okon was on the phone, speaking to his friend Udeme, the same man that caught his wife red-handed damaging the sofa. Udeme did not sound too happy as he narrated all that happened to his friend Okon, who felt so ashamed of himself. "Your wife munched on our office sofa, and I don't think that is normal behavior. No wonder you told me to keep her extremely busy at the office. You should consider taking her for deliverance because this looks more spiritual than physical," he said to Okon as they both ended the conversation. Okon was so embarrassed to hear this from his friend. He never expected Ene to do such a thing on her first day of work. His friend had been kind enough to offer her a job, yet Ene's addiction had followed her even to the workplace. It was now clear to Okon that this was not just a habit or compulsion. It had to be something deeper, maybe a possession, So he decided to take his friend's advice to take his wife for deliverance. That evening, Okon sat his wife down and insisted that they get help. He informed her of a prophet that his friend recommended to him who specialized in deliverance. Are you trying to say I am possessed? Ene asked Okon, who told her that he didn't believe she was possessed but thought they should explore every option to help her overcome this strange addiction. I just want my wife back, Okon said softly, his voice heavy with concern. I don't know what else to do, Ene. Please, let's just try. Ene hesitated, feeling a mix of shame and fear. She didn't want to believe something was wrong with her, but she could see how much her addiction was hurting Okon and ruining their home. After a long pause, she finally nodded in agreement. Alright, Okon, if it will help, I'll go. The next morning, Ene and Okon set out for the prophet's place. His compound was modest, but people from far and wide sought him out for spiritual intervention. As they arrived, the prophet, a tall man with a calm demeanor, welcomed them inside. After listening to Okon's story, the prophet instructed Ene to kneel before him. We will pray, and through the power of the Almighty, we will see what forces are at work, he said. Okon and Ene, though nervous, followed his instructions, kneeling as he began to pray fervently. As the prophet's voice rose in intensity, Okon closed his eyes, praying silently for the healing of his wife. However, moments into the prayer, Okon felt something was off. He opened his eyes to check on Ene, only to find her missing. Ene! He called out, his voice trembling with worry. The prophet stopped mid-prayer and opened his eyes, immediately sensing something was wrong. Where has she gone? He asked, with a shocking look on his face as they searched the entire vicinity for her. After a few minutes, they found Ene outside the back of the house, hunched over a discarded cushion, tearing it apart and eating the foam like a starved animal. Okon's heart broke at the sight of this, his face contorting in anguish. He didn't know how to help her anymore and tried so hard not to give up on her. Ene! Okon shouted, rushing towards her, trying to stop her. But the damage had already been done. Her compulsion had taken over. The prophet, observing from a distance, approached with a calm but serious expression. This is no ordinary addiction, he said gravely. There is a deep spiritual affliction at work here, but it will not end unless she truly wants to be free. Ene's face was filled with tears, foam clinging to the corners of her mouth as she looked up at Okon, ashamed of what she had done. Deep down, Ene knew that she didn't want to stop. The joy she felt from indulging in her strange addiction was so overpowering, but seeing the heartbreak in her husband's eyes, Ene felt a wave of guilt wash over her. Her strange addiction could cost her her marriage, and Ene knew that she had to do something about it. Later that night, Ene sat quietly in the dining room, feeling so ashamed of herself. She could see the pain in Okon's eyes as he watched her from across the table. The realization that she had once again lost control filled her with dread, and Ene knew that she really needed to change, and this time mean it. Just as they sat there quietly, Ene felt a very sharp pain in her stomach. She screamed out in agony, holding her stomach, unable to comprehend what could be happening. Okon, terrified of what could be wrong, rushed to assist her to the hospital when they noticed that she was bleeding. At the hospital, Ene was quickly wheeled into the emergency room as Okon paced back and forth, his mind racing with fear and worry. He couldn't understand what was happening, but he knew her addiction had something to do with it. His heart pounded with dread as he waited anxiously, praying silently for his wife's safety. Hours passed before a doctor finally came out. The doctor's face was serious but calm. Mr. Okon, the doctor began, your wife is stable now, but we've discovered something troubling. She's pregnant. Okon's eyes widened in shock. Pregnant? But how? The doctor continued. She's in the early stages, but her condition is complicated due to her unusual foam eating habit. The chemicals and materials in foam are not safe, and they've already begun affecting her health and that of the baby. As it stands now, the baby has a 50-50 chance of survival, and any more ingestion of foam could lead to serious complications. Okon's heart sank. He had no idea that his wife was pregnant. Her addiction was not only hurting her, it was endangering their unborn child, and the weight of the situation hit him hard like a bolt of lightning. She'll need to stop consuming foam immediately, or the baby's life could be at serious risk, the doctor said as he walked away. Okon, heartbroken and sad, went in to see his wife Ene, who was now overwhelmed with emotions. She was lying in bed, pale and weak, and her eyes were filled with guilt and fear. She had heard everything the doctor said and was so devastated to know that her baby's life was now hanging in the balance because of her. Okun, I did not know, she whispered as she broke down in tears. I didn't know I was hurting our baby, she said as her heart broke into a million pieces. I promised to change, she said to Okon, who could see how broken she was. Taking her hand in his, Okon assured her that he would help her in the best way that he could, but for it to really work, Ene has to make up her mind to change and fight the addiction from within. Ene nodded, determined to fight for the life of her child. She began to realize the full impact of her actions, knowing that it was not only just about her anymore. Her child's life was now at stake. Ene, from that moment, became more committed than ever to break free from her addiction. It wasn't an easy journey, but with determination, she ensured that she kept to her words. The days that followed were some of the hardest for Ene. Her craving for foam intensified as if her body was fighting against her will to stop. She struggled constantly, her thoughts consumed by the urge to tear into anything soft. But every time the craving hit, she reminded herself of the baby growing inside of her, the baby whose life she was now fighting for. In the first week after leaving the hospital, Ene's body went into withdrawal. She felt agitated, her fingers itching to grab something, anything with foam. One night, as Okon slept, Ene quietly slipped out of the bed and crept into the living room. She stared at the remains of the couch, her mouth watering, her hands trembling. As the craving surged through her, she felt like she was losing her mind. But just as she reached for the torn fabric, she stopped. Ene stood frozen, her hand hovering over the foam. The image of her child's fragile life flashed in her mind. With a deep breath, she stepped back, tears streaming down her face. She rushed back to the bedroom, waking Okon as she cried in his arms. I almost gave in, she sobbed. I don't know how to stop it, Okon. I'm so scared. Okon held her tightly. We'll get through this, Ene, one day at a time. Her struggles continued at work. Ene's co-workers noticed her agitation, her inability to focus. One afternoon, whilst her supervisor had stepped out, Ene's cravings became unbearable. She found herself staring at the cushioned chair in the corner of the office, her heart racing as the foam inside called to her. In desperation, she grabbed the scissors she had hidden in her desk, intending to cut open the chair, but just before she could do it, the thought of her baby's health stopped her again. Ene dropped the scissors and rushed to the restroom, splashing cold water on her face. She stared at herself in the mirror, her reflection, tired and broken. I won't lose control again, she whispered to herself. She forced herself to return to her desk and push through the rest of the day, though the battle inside her mind was relentless. To help her cope, Okon removed every trace of foam from the house. He replaced their furniture with wooden chairs and a thin mattress filled with cotton. The change was uncomfortable, but Okon was determined to eliminate all temptations. He also began attending church services with Ene, where they worked together on understanding the word of God that opened their eyes on how to deal with her addiction and learning godly coping mechanisms. There were times Ene felt she was on the verge of giving up. The cravings would come in waves, hitting her when she least expected it. On particularly bad days, she would find herself sitting on the floor, hands clenched into fists, fighting back tears. But in those moments, she would think of her child, the life growing inside of her, and hold on. Ene began to pray more, remembering that only God can save her at this point. She read her Bible more and drew strength from the Word of God. Ene felt an overwhelming sense of peace, knowing that she was no longer alone. As the weeks passed, Ene's strength began to grow. Each day without her phone was a small victory, and Okon stood by her side through it all. The cravings were still there, lurking in the background, but Ene had found a deeper source of willpower to resist. Her focus shifted from her own desires to the life she was nurturing inside of her. She was finally beginning to see hope. One afternoon, Ene sat in the living room, the same space that had once been littered with foam. Now, it was sparse but peaceful. The thin cotton mattress lay in the corner, a stark reminder of the journey she had been on. She felt the baby kick gently, a sign of life and promise, and a tear of gratitude slipped down her cheek. Okon walked into the room, his face soft with admiration as he looked at his wife. "You're doing so well," he said, sitting beside her. "I know it's been hard, but look how far you've come." Ernest smiled, placing her hand over her stomach. "It's not just for me anymore," she whispered. "This baby is my everything now." With the support of Okon, her face, and her own determination, she gradually began to let go of her strange addiction. The cravings grew weaker, and the joy of preparing for her child's arrival took center stage in her life. Finally, the day came when Ene went into labor. The journey had been long and difficult, but as she held her new baby in her arms, Ene felt a profound sense of relief and fulfillment. The baby, a bouncing baby boy, cooed softly in her arms, oblivious to the battle his mother had fought to ensure his safety. Okon sat by her bedside, tears of joy filling his eyes as he looked down at their son. "We made it," he said, his voice thick with emotion as Ene looked up at him, her heart full of joy as she said to him that "we made it." In that moment, the weight of all the struggles they had endured seemed to melt away. The strange addiction that had once threatened to tear their lives apart was now just a distant memory. Together, they had overcome the odds and welcomed a new beginning. As they gazed at their son, the warmth of their love and resilience filled the room, a testament to the power of perseverance, faith, and the strength of their bond. Ene's battle with addiction had been long and difficult, but with the love and support of her husband and her unwavering commitment to her child, she had come out on the other side, stronger than ever. She knew the journey wasn't over, but she was ready to face whatever came next. That was how Ene won her difficult addiction and reclaimed her life. The lesson to be learned from this story is that addictions can not only be harmful to you, but to those around you. For you to overcome addictions, you need to recognize the problem and take active steps to change. You cannot win if you don't recognize your addiction as a problem and be willing to fight it. Temptations will come, but standing firm in Christ in these times and remaining committed to the Word of God is the main ingredient needed to overcome. Also, surround yourself with people who are willing to help you fight your addictions and see you win. Always remember that addictions can be overwhelming, but with the right mindset, support, and resources, it is possible to overcome and emerge stronger on the other side. I hope you enjoyed the story.